Should be live in a minute. All right. I think we are live. Hello. Good morning, good evening from wherever you guys are joining in. My name is Shantanu, and welcome again to yet another interesting stream with Zencoder. And today with me, I have Amos from Get Swan, and I will let him do the intro. But before we set the stage, let's start with a super interesting question. What if your next CEO doesn't sleep, doesn't take meeting, and isn't a human? So AI has essentially moved from copilots to automation to a much bigger space. The autonomous agents now these days can plan, execute, and essentially optimize entire business functions on your behalf. So today we are joined by Amos Bar-Joseph, who is building an AI-first company with just 3 employees, aiming to scale to 30 million ARR, and not just by hiring a large team, but essentially by orchestrating AI agents. Before I jump in and before I let Amos introduce himself, Amos, congratulations on the race. We just saw that you raised $6 million, so congratulations on that. But yeah, the stage is all yours. Would love to have a short intro and would love for you to explain and talk more about what you're building.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so we raised $6 million. We announced it yesterday to build the first autonomous business, proving that you can scale with intelligence, not with headcount. And this investment is actually validation to our thesis. And it's crazy that investors are on board because it's the first business that takes a funding round and doesn't say, oh, we're going to double down the team and we're going to grow to 40 people and then to 60 people, etc. So we're living in a crazy time, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry.
So follow up on that, right? So it is quite risky to bet on a company which is completely AI, if I may say. But just going a step back, and what made you realize, I don't actually need to build a big team or a company and, scale it to like 100 people. That is what growth is all about. But, just be 3 of us. Like, was it a drunken bed or was it like a challenge between you guys? How did you decide like 3 of us, 30 million is what we're going to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's not my first rodeo. I've actually built and scaled 2 B2B startups before, based on the old unicorn growth at all costs playbook, where you raise a ton of money before you even know who you're selling to and what you're selling. And you grow to 30, 40 people before you got to your first $1 million in revenue. And then from round to round, you're trying to scale the vision and the total addressable market and the story rather than the real core metrics of the business. And then, sooner or later, you realize that you've built your company on a sick foundation. It's very hard to maneuver. There's so much bloat. And I've realized that this playbook isn't for me, basically. And when I started Swan, I saw this agentic revolution happening. And, combined with my experience, I felt like this is the time to reinvent the playbook of how do you scale a business in an AI native world. And, we were just 3 founders, all of us, like we were in the 2 previous companies that I had. So we had a lot of experience working together. We knew we had the right competency. We have Neve, who is our amazing CTO, who's built an infrastructure and a product that supports over 200 businesses just by himself. Then we have Ido, who is an amazing product person who can be super technical, understand the agentic architecture, but then get pixel perfect on where to put the right button on the screen. And then finally, myself, who I'm good at just generating attention, monetizing that attention, and turning that into pipeline and revenue eventually. And so we thought, okay, we don't need any other core skills to scale the business from the early days. So fuck it, let's just not hire anyone. And that's how it started, as a bold bet between friends. And we said, you know what, let's try to get to $10 million ARR per employee. That's the goal. We don't care about a unicorn status. We don't care about valuation. What we care about is proving the world that the times have changed and you can create massive leverage just if you build from the start for the right fundamentals.
But that's a great answer. I definitely agree. But quite interesting and a lot of follow-up. on that, right? If time permit, I'll definitely get back on it. But Shantanu, do you want to take anything on this? I have a few questions after you.
Sure. One question from me is what functions are essentially run by AI in your company? I mean, since you're like a three people company, so what are the things that you automate or you make the AI take decisions on your behalf?
Yeah. So, two different questions in the sense that what functions are we automating and what decisions are we
Mhm.
enabling the agents to
Yeah.
take? And it's important for me for that distinction because our entire thesis for building the autonomous business is that we're not really hiring agents instead of hiring employees. These are not digital employees in our sense. How we look at it is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to scale each employee in the team into their 100x version. Okay, so we're asking ourselves, how
Mhm.
can we build an agentic army around the CTO so we can create the 100x engineer? How can we create an agentic army around the product so we create the 100x product? And how can we do that to create the 100x seller, basically? And so our entire approach is very human centric in that sense. And so to understand what types of jobs to be done the agents should take and what type of jobs to be done humans should take, we have this point of view where we say, okay, to get to the 100x version of each person on the team, we need to keep the human in their zone of genius as much time as possible at any given day. Their zone of genius, it's basically that intersection between their passions and skills that can create disproportionate value that compounds over time for the company. Whatever is outside of that, we thrive that the agents would automate and will take the decision making on their own. Whatever is inside of it, we actually thrive that the human will make the decision making and agents will amplify, will augment. And if you create that balance, then what happens is that you start scaling all of that knowledge and expertise and passion, and you can get to that 100x version of yourself.
Makes sense. Yeah, 100%. I mean, traditionally, humans manage processes, and now essentially we're moving towards more human supervising the agent systems. So that's how the evolution has happened. So,
Exactly.
following up on the same thing, right? So, how does orchestration actually mean in practice for you?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example from, because we're like in a very like R&D oriented audience here. I come from growth and I have a lot of examples there. But in our R&D, what happened is that the production itself, the execution itself has collapsed. Okay. What is left is like both ends of that middle, which is basically specification and review, we call it. So the process of specifying to the AI what should get built, we dedicated a lot of resources into it. Okay, so a lot of thinking on what should get built and how it should get built is where we invest all the effort. Then what we also invest the effort is how can we create a review, a code review and quality assurance process that actually takes all this code that out there and make sure that this is high quality code that makes sense. And then we take that logic of just sitting at both ends of specification and review to each process that that surrounds R&D. So I'll give you an example. Swan has an amazing support capabilities into it, and so for those of you in the audience don't know what we do, basically, so just a quick sentence about it, just to be helpful to understand this example. So Swan is the first coding agent for GTM professionals that is designed for GTM professionals, not for developers. So we've all seen the capabilities of Cursor and Cloud Code, but imagine if you've given these capabilities to non-developers. Okay, and so Swan can just help any person in the GTM team to turn any go-to-market process into an agentic workflow in seconds, from prompt to pipeline, so they can scale that process with intelligence, not headcount. Now, going back to the example, Shantanu, sorry about that detour. Basically, the way that it works, you talk to Swan, just like you talk to a coding agent, and Swan has a built-in extensive knowledge base. Okay, so you ask it a question, and then if Swan doesn't know the answer, or if there's a bug, okay, it can escalate to us. Okay, so now there's a review. Okay, we look at it, and now we can tell Swan either to debug. Swan can just go out and debug, for itself, and it will go out and find some conclusions, look in the logs, look in the executions, etc., and then come up with hypothesis. Okay, now we can tell Dorothy, our product manager agent, to turn that into a ticket in linear. Okay, that invest a lot in, we have a lot of knowledge in that agent of how we specify, how we create a ticket, a lot of different understanding of our best practices, etc. That puts up in linear. That's set up automatically a cursor agent that can create a PR, and then the CTO reviews that. Okay, and so you can see how there are human in the loop in this chain of actions here. There's a bug for the user, knowledge base wasn't suffice, surface it up for a human to see. The human sent Swan to create a bug report that would send to a PM to create a ticket for that will spin up a coding agent, and there's a human at the end that reviews that PR before it goes out. And this is by design. It's not because the AI isn't good enough. It's just because we are keeping ourselves in the specification and review of processes, basically.
Mhm.
That sounds interesting, right? That's a system in place.
Yeah.
So basically, to summarize, your AI agents are working more harder than most of us on Mondays. So basically, it's good to build the systems, right? But even when you're building the systems, it does take a lot of time. And now, at a scale what you are at, how do you maintain the balance between customer retention and servicing them and building in new processes? Because it's just, again, three of you, and you have customers already, like we are one of them. So how do you manage that? Because we build a lot of AI agents, and it takes a lot hell of time, right? Just to build a perfect agent to do what it's supposed to do, and then test it, and then bring it into production. So where do you balance? What is the balance for you?
Yeah, I think the secret here is that we have a very fundamental belief about agents that I think it's a little bit different than everybody else. Not everybody else, but some people follow the same thing. So we think that all agents, no matter what they do, what the task, they should be coding agents with file systems. Okay, so file first coding agent. Everything, no matter what you do. You want to summarize an email, no matter what, you need to have a coding agent with a file system. And if you build an architecture like that from the ground up, two things will happen. A, you don't need a lot of agents. Just one agent can do a lot of things. The agent that you're building as your product could start doing a lot of things for the company. So it compounds. Super easy to just add another capability. Is just another file and an endpoint. That's it. Sometimes the agents themselves could create those on their own. You don't need to do anything. You just tell them, create that file with instructions or a script, create that endpoint, and that's it. And so that's one thing. Okay. The other thing is that coding agents with file systems are extensible. They are code extensible. It means that you just build it once and they can start extending themselves. They don't have really limitations to them, right? And so it really starts to compound. And then, even if you have a few, you build out a service once, it takes you minutes to just unlock everyone to just use that service. And so what you start doing that compounds, you create this synergy between R&D. We used to have that separation. R&D builds for the customer, and then the organization has needs. And so it needs to ping like RevOps, or it needs to ping someone else, etc. But these lines in an autonomous business, they get blurred. Everything all this stuff are coding agents. They're all collaborating basically to deliver an amazing experience for the product, for the customers, and to support the employees in the company.
Sounds pretty interesting. So you're giving away your secret sauce, right? But just to come on the secret sauce, it's now very easy to build, say, Swan, right? Or any of the GTM tools out there, any of the tools, any of the apps, because even if not technically sound, you know a little bit about, say, the first two prototypes. You can definitely send. You can get it going, test the market and everything. What is the mode now? Where do you see the mode in businesses anymore? Because You can just copy paste everything easily. If you're talking about distribution and attention grabbing, it's not for everyone, right? So our users, most of them developers, they love being at the background, working on their projects and getting it out and helping people out there, right? So
Mhm.
how do you distribute now? How do you make sure you have the business mode, and in this competitive landscape, you can actually win?
Yeah. So I love that question. And I think I have a different point of view on what's happening right now in the market. If you've been following along the stock market, so there's something called SaaS apocalypse. If you heard about
Yeah.
that, SaaS apocalypse. It's basically the prices of SaaS companies of their shares is dropping like crazy every time that Claude releases any kind of like new capability or OpenAI releases new capability, etc. And the translation of the market reaction is that vibe coding is going to eat software. And then what's the moat, right, Niraj? So to your question, just to reframe it in a different way. And I have a different point of view on that. I don't think that vibe coding is going to eat software. Okay. I think that coding agents are going to eat software. Coding agents doesn't equal vibe coding. I'll explain why. We are, for example, coding agents for GTM. Okay. And we think, and this is not vibe, they're not vibe coding, right? Maybe you say they vibe GTMing, whatever. We don't call it like that, right? And what we think is that the future are going to be separated into two. You're building a coding agent. A coding agent is a platform. It's code extensible. It's unlimited. It could build anything. And so if you build a coding agent and you're successful, then you've built a platform, basically. Everyone can start building on top of you, okay? No matter what you are, if you're building to sell what you're building to someone else, or if you're building to solve a problem for yourself, you're building on top of an existing coding agent. And then you're going to see a proliferation of coding agents. So there will be coding agents for GTM, coding agents for cyber, coding agents for finance, coding agents for HR. Everything will become coding agents in that sense. And then the other camp will be the folks that didn't build a coding agent. What they will do, eventually, they will build on top of a coding agent. And so they will become point solutions in this revolution. And so what we're seeing is that the SaaS apocalypse, the fear of the market is correct, because SaaS is dead, not because vibe coding is going to replace it. No, our customers, they don't think about investing their time vibe coding a CRM for themselves. So it takes so much time to maintain and to support that they need to build their own product, right? And indie hackers are not going to fight against Salesforce, because Salesforce has so much advantage over these indie hackers, and they can't really support these large enterprises from an SLA perspective, a go-to-market, marketing, so many other things that are not just software. But what is going to happen is that coding agents are going to eat the SaaS world. And we're transitioning into a world where every software that we're interacting is fundamentally a coding agent that is extensible and can turn into anything you'd like, basically. And the differences between them are different context models, different user experience. So we're building it for go-to-market professionals. Other coding agents are built for developers, different user experiences, different context models. You don't think about repos in GTM, you think about your funnel, you think about ICPs, right? Different orchestration. So I don't care about CI/CD. My coding agent doesn't care about your CI/CD. My coding agent cares about your Salesforce, about your HubSpot, etc. And so if you look at these three layers, these are the differentiation. These are the moats between coding agents. What's your user experience? Who's the user? What's the context model? What's the orchestration layer that you've built? And then you get a coding agent, which is a platform. And that's our moat, Niraj.
That's a beautiful answer, right out there. But still, right? It's a competitive world, right? It's not crazy. You are a tweet away from becoming a new product. Like we saw OpenClaw, we see many other products just coming in on it just becomes the next big thing, and people start using it and building on top of it. Definitely Swan is something really well made, right? Your target market is different, but eventually in the background is the product that you're building, which is again built through code and built through development, which has become way easier now. So getting to market is easier, but how to sustain and grow is is it going to be distribution, marketing, where the demand is going to be more? Is it's the future to tell, right? As these coding agents per se, the models become more stronger with each release, and they can do amazing tasks, right? More powerful than the previous one. But definitely, it's a crazy world. It's a definitely AI world. We need to all be in it, take leverage out of it. I'll take a pause there. If Shantanu wants to ask more questions on top of it, then maybe we can go to questions. And they're really interesting, funny ones as well.
I don't have any major questions. I think most of it was pretty much covered by Neeraj on that. But Neeraj, as you just said, funny questions, and I just don't want to take a lot of time of Amos. So yeah, fire it away.
Yeah, someone is confusing for Andrew Tate for some reason.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Are you still kickboxing? Is the question. So
I like surfing and I respect women. So yeah, I'm not Andrew Tate.
that's a very good answer and good to know. But Shantanu, you want to take a few more questions in terms of the users?
No, I think users. I mean, I don't see a lot of questions, but there's one question from Larry Hale that I would love to bring it up to you, Amos. So, who in your 3% team verifies Agentic's high quality code? That's a question from the audience.
It's actually a great question. So, before we announced that developers are dead and coding agents are replacing them, right now developers are still maybe the most important function in an autonomous business, that's for sure. And what we figured out over time is that our criteria, if we will hire eventually another developer for the team, our criteria wouldn't be how good it uses a cursor, or it wouldn't be how much code it could generate. It wouldn't be how fast it can build an agent. It wouldn't be any of those. The only criteria that we care about is how good is their code reviews. It's what's becoming the most important capability for developers, because when the cost of production of software collapses into zero, and you can just generate software just like that, as much as software as you can, the bottlenecks become specification and review, right? You need to specify what to build, and you need to review it, right? If you don't do a good work on specification, that's product usually, right? Telling what to build, then you just build software no one uses, no one needs. Then, if you specified it correctly, but no one's on the other side to assure high quality code, then basically the code won't really function, right? And so, to your question, that is the most important thing. We will never give it out to the agent completely. There will always be human in the loop. The way that we look at it is that the CTO is in charge of code review, and we use AI to help in that process. So we have a lot of different agents that we're using to help with the code review process. To simplify it, maybe there are a few backs and forth before it gets to the CTO. Maybe when it gets to the CTO, it has a copilot that can understand specifically, the PR and what does it do and why, etc., and what was the previous thing that surfaced and all of that. But eventually, we still believe that a human should be at that point, and this is the most critical point to be.
We agree. Yeah, definitely in Zencoder we follow the same principles. Just wanted to talk about a little, when you talk about specifications and orchestration, is where Zenflow's like USP is, right? If you may, because even if you have a prompt, you can actually break the machine can our agent can actually break it down into specs, talk with the human, how do you want to build it, and it will be a proper spec driven development process. So it's not only playing with prompts, but actually building real software. So it's good to have you and speak about specifications over here and this is where we are really good at. Apart from that, there's one more question. If Shantanu, you want to pick it up, like how secure is your company against prompt injection? This is something important in today's world, because you must have heard from different news how even the security at Meta who use OpenCloud could not actually control it. So this is something nice. If you could answer that, please.
Yeah. So It's an important aspect. So OpenClaw, it's a coding agent. Swan, it's a coding agent. So when you work with a coding agent, the security risks are bigger. Why? Because the coding agent it's unstoppable, right? It's extensible. It can just create all these operations on the fly. So if there's a malicious attack, that's very dangerous. Now, the difference is between OpenClaw and Swan is the machine. OpenClaw has access to the computer, has access to the machine. Swan doesn't. Okay, that's a huge borderline here. And when Swan doesn't have access to the machine, what we're doing is that there is an applicative layer on top of the code operations that Swan can run. And so there are limitations to that. And so the downside of it is that we're creating all these abstractions and constraints on top of agents. So it's not maximalism like OpenClaw. It cannot really do everything, right? There are limitations to that, but that's the security decisions that you got to make. Basically, in a coding agent, a security decision is limiting its capabilities from having its own computer and machine, or basically wrapping up specific code operations in an endpoint that to actually perform that code operation, you got to call that endpoint. You got to follow a specific rigorous process. You cannot just allow the agent to use Stripe, for example. You cannot do that. You cannot have the agent just interact with Stripe's API. You need to have abstractions on top of that API, that the only way for the agent to interact with that is through the code layer that you created that stands between the agent and Stripe's API, because you don't want someone to code inject or the agent to go crazy, etc. So this is a little bit of an abstract answer to how secure we are, but it's more about our philosophy that Swan coding operations lives in a sandbox, in a controllable sandbox, and doesn't have access to the machine itself.
I hope that answers this question, definitely. But yeah, that's a secure way of looking at things, doing it. But you never know, right? In the AI world, you can still figure out a way. So nothing is 100% until it is 100%. So there are a few questions coming in. Blake asks about. You want to?
I think that's the last question, almost, that I'll pick up from the community, and then maybe we can close down for today. But here you go. So Blake is asking, what scaffolding do you currently have in place that you think will go away once the model gets better?
So what do you mean by scaffolding? Could you be more specific? If maybe you guys could share more light on that.
So I think it's more to do with the framework, or the basic boilerplate that you take care of. I think that's what he meant by scaffolding. This is again just my assumption, but Blake, feel free to throw more light. Yeah.
Maybe like preventions. You spoke about security, or where the human is in the loop. Those are the scaffoldings that you build. But eventually, models are getting better. Okay, the model can actually just take care of it. You don't even have to look at it anymore. So
yeah. Okay.
What do you
so
say?
I think two inevitable directions that we're heading towards. One is long tasks, basically, right? So people think that the more the agents will get better, the less you need a developer at the other side of it. We don't think that's where it's heading. It's more like the more they're getting better, it's not like they're replacing work. We just send them to do more work, basically, right? You just send them to do more. So and then you can maybe, what happens is that we see the rise of parallel work, right? And so you see that people start using multiple agents simultaneously because they start sending these long-running agents, right? So that is one thing that we're going to see that evolves, is just the ability for the agent to take more features on this shoulder, but you still need a man in the loop there. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing, maybe that is more related to the question, that we don't see agents there yet, a lot because of security measures, etc. But it's really is running the machine itself, not just the code. Running the machine is interesting. So really being able to control the processes and the memories and the storage and all the different operations around the code itself, I think is just a natural evolution. And I think that I definitely can see a future where developers they are still a core part of the R&D organization, and these engineers that are end to end and understand business logic and understand product, etc. They have a world, even if the model gets better and better and better. What I think is more at risk is DevOps people, because DevOps people, all they do basically is they are the technical people that just make sure the machine works. There isn't any kind of like business logic here, business intuition, user understanding. It's just running a machine. And what we learn is that AI is pretty good at understanding machines. So if I would say that something is at risk, and that will definitely change the entire way that R&D works, is when the DevOps go through the truly agentic revolution.
Mm-hmm. On the technical part, I think someone also answered, like he hopes it would be memory management, because again with agents it's a nightmare, right? Figure out the context. Sometimes it's just, if it gets too large enough and the memory is full, so you don't know how to actually give more context to the agents. So but great answer to that in terms of human as well. In the interest of time, I have 3 closing questions, but if you want to pick up more from the users, if you have time, maybe we just go to the closing questions. Shantanu.
I think let's go to the closing questions. I'll maybe get in touch with Amos and maybe answer those questions later for the community. But
sure.
Yes, Neeraj.
That would be great.
So my first one would be, so it's models are getting really, really close to AGI, if you may, right? May or may not, but it's about decision making, right? What should founders stop doing today, because AI can already do it better, right? What do you think that would be?
Yeah, so I don't think there's one answer to that. I think that we're going into a world where AI could basically execute any tasks from end to end. You don't really need a human in the loop to complete that task. What you do need is, when you look at your organization and as a founder, etc., you need to understand what is your unique advantage. What is something that separates you from the rest, that makes you better, basically. And for me, that's storytelling, for example. Okay, I'm really good at telling stories. The autonomous business story, the coding agent for GTM story. These are stories, and I write about them on LinkedIn, and that's how we've organically generated tens of millions of dollars in pipeline because of the launch that we had yesterday. It's because of my storytelling capabilities. If I would give that to the AI, I would lose all my unfair advantage, right? So I will never do that, no matter how the AI gets better, because that's my unfair advantage. The moment that I lose that, I lose my edge to win in a competitive market. But maybe for another founder, they're not really good at storytelling. Maybe AI could take over that. They could actually run storytelling for them. Maybe their ability is actually to pick up the phone and cold call people. They're crazy. They're not afraid of that. They can just pick up the phone and be abrupt, and they're amazing at convincing people over the phone to do what they want. And so they could just, at the early days, sit on the phone and just pick up and call prospects and close deals like that. And they will never give it to the AI because that gives them an edge. Or maybe there's a founder who's just have an amazing product vision, and he's super well at just defining a vision for the product. It will never give that away for the AI, because that's what separates it from the rest. So what we're entering a world where you have your unique point of view, your unique taste, basically. And that's what's keeping you better than other people and better than the AI. And the moment that we lose that, maybe that's the moment that we don't need the job market anymore. I don't know where it comes.
Yeah. Definitely, that's a good way of looking at it, right? I think you must have spoken to a lot of founders who might be wanting to or watching this, right? They should self-introspect, understand what they're good at, and delegate all the rest to the agents. That's a very, very, very nice perspective to look at and to succeed in the world. Definitely, we love your stories on LinkedIn and your webinars. It's you definitely are a very good storyteller. Just a follow-up question on that. I have 2 more, so this is the second last one.
I'll be honest, Neeraj, this is the last question because I got to bounce to another call after that. Okay.
So if you were to starting from scratch, right, and 2026, how would you build differently?
So we were fortunate enough to build to this revolution. We think that we represent the way that you should build, actually, an AI native company. And I'll try to reframe that. And I think, to just instead of what we would do different, I think what we did that was right is that we took a strong bet on focusing on using AI to scale each person on the team, not to replace, not to automate, but to scale. And I think that every successful AI implementation on planet Earth was focused on scaling the human. And a lot of failed implementations happened because they were focused on replacing the human. So I think that that's a core part of our point of view that I think that founders should adopt in an AI native world, is that don't fall into the AI rabbit hole too far, because the human is at the center, and that what separates you from the rest, and you should double down on that.
Definitely. I mean, it was great having you, Amos. Thank you for the time. Shantanu, if you want to close it, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amos. Thank you so much for joining in. It was lovely having you here. And Bus, before you go, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. And thank you so much for staying tuned. Once again, very good day. Have a good one. And I will see you in the next one. Take care
Definitely.
and
All
cheers.
the best, Amos. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.